Alright, so I did a video about the game. Well, I kind of skipped over while I was making the video something about that episode that in the game is utterly irrelevant, meaningless, unimportant, to the point that someone watching the episode might have forgotten. What are Ktarians? And that is something that gets used very strangely in Star Trek, because Ktarians are one of those minor, lesser races that have been used enough times to have a recognizable name. They are definitely meant to be a specific race. Thing is, we don't really know much about them. There's several different things that they have been said, like this Borg here, who looks almost indistinguishable from a liberated Borg human, is said to be a Ktarian. How does that work? We don't know. Also, there have been several drastically different appearances for actual Ktarians too, like Etana Jol here, who in some ways looks similar to a Ferengi with hair, because she has the same sort of bulbous, distended forehead that a Ferengi would have. And of course, this sort of wrinkly thing on the nose is actually kind of similar to the way a Ferengi nose works. But she doesn't have the giant ears, and while she has a bulbous forehead, we don't really get to see the rest of her skull's shape because it's covered up by her hair. Now, then we have Naomi Wildman, who looks human except for these little tiny spikes sticking out of her forehead. Now, this is, as far as I know, Etana Jol's eye, with its horizontal slit pupil. In real life, horizontal slit pupils are seen as a sign of a life form that needs to have a certain kind of field of view where it's not actually conducive to being able to see well in a left-right form, but in an up-down form. Cats, which are really good at seeing horizontal movement but less good at seeing vertical movement, have vertical slit pupils. Oh, notably, while Etana Jol has slit pupils, Wildman doesn't. Then we have several other alien looks that might or might not be Ktarians. Oh yeah, also Star Trek Adventures Beta Quadrant source book goes with the non-canon explanation for the difference in appearances that the Ktarian homeworld actually has two different sentient species. You could say that they evolved on different continents or something, but or maybe that they're actually kind of sort of the same species, just uh, divergent evolution of what was originally a single population resulted in two drastically different populations arising over time. Something like that, And also it suggests that there is actually some intermingling between the two groups. So while they have drastically different appearances, you will sometimes see individuals that mix traits, which I suppose could be the explanation for this guy. He doesn't have spikes on his forehead. He also doesn't have the bulbous things on his forehead. But he has the same forehead contours that this guy does, just without the spikes. And yeah, you see where this is going. Mixing traits to be boring. Instead of mixing traits to add spikes on top of this. Because this guy here, Akel, he has a very similar look to Etana Jol, except that he has a single ridge on his nose instead of a double ridge on his nose. And this indentation here doesn't have a diamond shape inside it, it's just empty. Still though, very similar. Also, I'm not sure if this is a collar or part of his neck. Could be either. Trajak. They didn't actually tell us what species he was. Also, this guy is said to be a Miradorn. Not a Ktarian, a Miradorn. Although, let's see, how much do we know about the Miradorn? Oh yeah, that's right, 3 sentences. Yep, okay. Yeah, what planet did the Miradorns come from? I don't know. So you could go with the fan idea that Miradorn is actually a name for a race that came from the Ktarian homeworld, and that if you were to use the names from the Ktarians, um, Miradorn is the name for one of the 2 races from the Ktarian homeworld, and thus, you know, internally, Ktarians use 2 different names for the 2 different groups. One of those is the Miradorn. Eh, logically, that actually checks out. Uh, but, people who are just referring to someone from the planet Kataris, yeah, Kataris, would just see it as, a Ktarian. Also, apparently the reason the planet is called Kataria, it's actually a reference to Atari, the video game producers. Because the whole, the game thing, and one of the companies that distributed Tetris was Atari. So one of the people in the production staff decided to use a name similar to that of Atari for one of the aliens. Boy. Well, that was a short little side tangent. I didn't want to go into this in intense detail in the one about the episode, because that would have made it too long. Interesting little bit of a side thing is that this is a race that we've seen them several times in several episodes, but in universe, at no point in time did the production team give us any sort of a detailed explanation of what uh, their actual status is. From one perspective, you could see it as wanting to avoid writing yourself into a corner. Well, from another perspective, it's just like lazy writing. I guess you could call it lazy writing, honestly, because Etana Joel was an individual who was written as having understandable motives, goals, and desires. However, Etana Joel was not given a detailed backstory. Her race does not have a backstory. They barely even have a name in the episode The Game. Because ultimately, the game is about the game and not about Etana Joel or the Ktarians. And that is part of the reason why we know so little about that race, is the race itself is never actually in the limelight. It's being used as a background performer in a episode about something else. Well, that is something that you could have a lot of fun with, though, because it gives you freedom to fill in the blanks, because quite frankly, there's a lot of blanks to fill in if you want to use the Ktarians. And that is something you could have a lot of fun with. See you next time.